This video is brought to you by Raid Shadow Legends. I'm just kidding, don't worry. God, can you imagine? It's been a little over a week since my video on DrApeis and Lovesick, which I'm sure you know is now named Love Letter, My True Feelings. I was surprised when that video hit even 1,000 views, let alone what it is now. Before making commentary on Love Letter, I wanted to observe the community for a while, and a lot has happened since then. The Yandere Dev thread on Kiwi Farms hit 2,000 pages. Yandere Dev got his subreddit back. Cameron F305 has been accused of faking screenshots between him and DrApeis. Yandere Dev isn't having a great time on Google search results. Someone found out Yandere Dev's example of what he considers poor art was actually a recolored character an artist made when she was 11 years old, and I quite frankly don't care. She's 18 now. You're a 30-year-old man who not only stole someone else's art, again, you made fun of a literal child's art, and that kind of infuriates me, not just as a person, but as an educator. Could you not be bothered to open paint and scribble something on your own? Yandere Dev copyright struck the Game Sleuth channel, forcing him to delete all of his past videos on Yandere Simulator. Now the Game Sleuth is doing something with his channel. I want to observe more before commenting on that. Just as a side note, a lot of you wanted me to talk about the copyright thing. There's really not much to say. I know people have their criticisms about the Game Sleuth, and I do as well. As I said before, no one is immune to criticism. Not me, not you, not DrApeis, not Yandere Dev. I see the situation as this. Yandere Dev has violated others' copyright in the past, so for him to get sanctimonious about it is honestly kind of ironic, albeit hysterical. YouTube has a notoriously flawed and easily abused copyright strike system. The Game Sleuth is protected under fair use if he claims his video is parody. The Game Sleuth didn't need to delete all of his videos because he's technically protected, but I get why he did. Fighting that in court costs time and money he likely doesn't have, so when you outweigh the pros and cons, well, I probably would have taken them down too. Further, the Game Sleuth did re-upload some of Yandere Dev's content, and I know in his most recent video he says that plain text on a background doesn't count as commentary. It does, but if you just flat out re-upload someone's content without anything additional, they do have the right to copyright strike it because it does belong to them. But if you re-upload with commentary, even if that commentary is plain text on a background, it is protected under fair use. Also, I do want to say that I'm glad the Game Sleuth did acknowledge that the account that crashed his livestream was fake. What I don't agree with is him saying you might want to consider changing sides in this whole game debacle because you aren't required to even pick a side. It's not so black and white, and truly this is what caused me to make my previous video. About 4 to 5 days ago, someone in my Discord asked me what I think about Love Letter and about some of the things I saw others saying, that it could or will end up like Yandere Simulator. By the way, a surprising amount of you were interested in a Discord, and you're welcome to join. The link is in the description. The channel was originally created by one of my mods for my Twitch because a lot of my subscribers asked for it. It's a small server, but everyone there is kind, and I'm generally pretty responsive to messages, so really don't be shy. When they asked me this, I was already writing the script for this video because I had a lot of things I wanted to bring up about it, but I do want to pump the brakes on judging it too quickly for 2 reasons. The project is too new and those involved, at least the ones I know the ages of, are significantly younger than Yandere Dev. I bring that up because I'm willing to cut someone a lot more slack when they're young. Granted, I'm not willing to excuse certain behaviors. However, when someone is willing to own up to some toxic behaviors and say, hey, yeah, that wasn't cool, my bad, and move forward, I think that person is worth another chance. Sometimes people need multiple chances to get it right, and that's perfectly fine. It's part of human growth and development, and I'm a huge advocate of normalizing changing your mind when presented with new information. We're all human, and while I don't think it's reasonable to compare the behavior of someone in their 30s to someone in their teens or early 20s under the same microscope, I also don't think it's never too late to make up for mistakes in the past. It's just interesting to me when someone who is 20 years old is more capable of admitting when they've messed up than someone in their 30s who is constantly wearing his age like a bastion of maturity. Sorry. Jeez, man, I should really get that checked out. With all of that out of the way, I think there are some things that DrApeis and Nocturnal can do to prove themselves more capable and more mature than Yandere Dev, and I'm presenting them in a list format for no other reason than I just felt like being cute. If you've watched my previous videos, you know that I'm not a stranger to maintaining a large community, so I'll be pulling from my experience there as well as bringing up Yandere Dev and his team's behavior as an example of what not to do. But also just offering a general, unsolicited opinion as an outsider because I guess I don't have anything better to do in quarantine. So getting started here. 1. Be as professional as you can and surround yourself with people who can put on a professional front. This is my biggest concern about what's been going on with Love Letter, and I'm concerned that I do see it going down a similar path as Yandere Dev. I know that sounds like I'm contradicting everything I just said a few minutes ago, but hear me out. Love Letter's announcement collided with yandere-dev losing his subreddit and email account, so I think it's reasonable to say that the timing increased the hype for the game while simultaneously increasing the amount of frustration it caused yandere-dev. The growth of the Discord exploded, and there were a lot of questionable decisions being made about moderatorship. In their defense, rapid growth can be overwhelming, and I want to offer them the benefit of the doubt and say that they were doing the best that they could. Since then, some questionable things have occurred in the Discord, handled with varying degrees of maturity and immaturity overall. I was worried because despite popular opinion, there were assets that Love Letter was using that were absolutely created for Yandere Simulator. My worry increased when DrApeis posted this in his Discord, announcing that as long as they don't ask for money, they're safe, which is not true. yandere-dev likes to assert that 99% of his assets are original, and that's just empirically untrue. However, there are assets in the game that are original, and swiping them would be theft, whether you're asking for money or not. I think it's a really smart decision to start straying from the Discord a bit, if not ultimately altogether. While hype is great for anything's publicity, not just a game, it can also be damaging and lead to a cesspool of misinformation, leaks, and impulsiveness. yandere-dev himself has admitted that the hype for Yandere Simulator caused him to target what he called low-hanging fruit to keep up hype for the game, and I still think that this is one of the most honest things that he's ever said, and it serves as a great warning, really. yandere-dev and those associated with him have a long history of unprofessionalism built up and continue to exhibit unprofessionalism to this day, and I'm not saying you have to have flawless professionalism. You shouldn't be in a Mototron 5000 and pump out robotic dialogue to your fans and critics, but use Yandere Simulator as an example. Consistent and toxic unprofessionalism can alienate your fans from the project. I see it as no different than me having a rough day at work and needing to vent. But I wouldn't go and vent to a superior. I'd come home and rant to my husband or call up a friend or my parents. You don't need to respond to questions or concerns immediately either. In fact, sometimes it's even better to wait on them overnight to avoid things like this happening. Because this isn't a disrespectful question at all, and the person asking it has a valid concern, given that they don't want to see what's happened to Yandere Simulator happen to Love Letter. In fact, this was a really good opportunity for someone to jump in and say, hey, I know you're worried given the precedent with Yandere Simulator, so let me reassure you that this is not the case. Maybe English isn't this person's first language either, or maybe the tone in their head when they were typing it sounded harmless to them and they had no intentions of ticking you off. I think a lot of us have been in that situation where we had a specific tone in mind and it just didn't come across that way. This reminds me a lot of yandere-dev's constant nitpicking about how people ask questions, responding to how people ask the question rather than answering the question itself. While Renee did answer the question, I think it pertinent to get your team on the same page about how to respond to questions that come up or even prepare responses to questions that may come up so everyone can be on the same page. Which leads me to number 2. Stray more from promoting Love Letter as a screw you yandere-dev game. The name change video was all in good fun, and fair game really, considering yandere-dev engages in his fair share of parody. I went back and forth on wondering if this was Bo-chan stabbing yandere-chan, or if they were just using the model they used in the Lovesick announcement, but then I looked at the description of the video and confirmed that yes, this is supposed to be Bo-chan stabbing and killing yandere-chan. And that's fine, like I said, all in good fun. But how do you think everyone would respond if yandere-dev then released a video changing the name of Yandere Simulator to Lovesick, with yandere-chan stabbing Bo-chan to death? I unfortunately didn't have the screenshot, and it's no longer there since he wiped his channel, but the Game Sleuth did post a conversation between him and DrApeis, where DrApeis confirmed that Love Letter is no longer a fan game. And I think this is a smart idea. I hope it continues that direction. I'm jumping right into my next point since it's very related to what I'm talking about. Number 3. Stay out of the Yandere Simulator and yandere-dev drama as much as possible. Since there seem to be efforts to stray from the Discord, I'll just share a few screenshots from the subreddit. There's clearly a market for this kind of game, and I just really hate to see Love Letter's progress hampered or wrapped up with a 6-year-old drama. Using Bijou Mike as a comparison, and disclaimer, I'm not a fan of Bijou Mike or promoting him. That's not me saying I hate the guy, I'm just not into his content or subscribed, so I can't call myself a fan. He seems like a perfectly reasonable person, and I'm happy for him and his success. The guy has, over 400 videos on Yandere Simulator now, and given recent events, there's been even more outcry for him to speak on the situation than what he has before. While I don't agree with everything he says, the guy has said a few times he wants to stay out of the drama. I think a lot of people get caught up in the you're either with us or against us mentality without realizing that you're allowed to stay out of the drama. You're allowed to not have opinion, more so. You're allowed to be in the middle of the road. You're allowed to make an entire page debunking every single criticism and concern that comes your way, but the phrase "don't feed the trolls" has never been more fitting in this situation. Number 4, trust your fans. As I said before, there's clearly a market for this game, and your fans are ultimately the ones who are going to play it and help promote it. You're going to gain fans and you're going to lose fans, but instead of dumping countless hours of energy into the negative, stop and do things like, for example, make a list of reasons why you might lose fans or why people's opinions might change about you, and recognize that it's okay. It sounds kind of hackneyed, but I'm sure you've heard the phrase, you can't please everyone. When I was a kid, my parents always told me to surround myself with positive people because they'll energize me. And energize is a word I use a lot, but going back to yandere-dev, it isn't hard to see him as an example of someone who has become so mentally exhausted after pouring so much time and effort into trying to change the narrative about him, but ultimately contributes a lot to it. I know I'm going to have someone say, oh, Ghost is saying I shouldn't stand up for myself. No, that's not it at all. When you're in the public eye, standing up for yourself on the internet is very different from being bullied in the schoolyard, and a lot of that has to do with the anonymity of the internet. Choosing to not publicly address trolling is tactful. Telling them that they're sabotaging your progress is not, and ultimately is going to lead to more trolling. And number 5, find a balance between taking criticism from fans while maintaining your vision for the game. I wanted to end on something more hopeful and bring up a person that a lot of people bring up, and that is none other than Scott Cawthon. When I taught 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, a lot of my students were huge fans of Scott Cawthon, and truthfully, as an educator, the man is someone I loved having students look up to. He's a shining example of taking criticism not as a character assassination, but as a means of improving yourself. If you aren't familiar, I'll catch you up to speed as quickly as I can. Before laying the foundation for what would be the behemoth that is the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, Scott Cawthon worked on other projects and games, including but not limited to The Pilgrim's Progress, which is an 8-part animation retelling of John Bunyan's book, The Desolate Hope, and Chipper & Sons Lumber Company. He submitted some of his games to Steam Greenlight when it was still around, and a lot of the criticism he received discussed how his animations looked like animatronics. Scott Cawthon said that he almost stopped developing games altogether before taking those same animatronic-like animations and characters and beginning development on Five Nights at Freddy's. And, well, the rest is history. Even then, Scott Cawthon still proves to be one of the kindest, gentlest, and sweetest people in the industry, and he's created a universe that people of all ages are enthralled by. The guy didn't get lucky. His fandom started in 2014, and it is still going strong 6 years later. His franchise has had its ups and downs. He's had his moments of uncertainty, but he bounces back from them in such an admirable way. What I appreciate most is that Scott is candid about his work. He looks at it with a critical eye and even admits when he thinks that something just isn't good enough for him. While I think he can be a bit hard on himself, and this is coming from someone who is perpetually hard on herself to the point where she feels like she needs to apologize for even existing, it reminds me of something a mentor told me when I was still in graduate school learning how to be a teacher. Look even at your best lesson plans and figure out what you can do to make them better. That's the basis of being an educator, really. There's always a different way to do something, there's always a better way to do something, and it's why educators are required to be lifelong learners. To keep our licenses, we're required to maintain and update our knowledge of pedagogy because things change. The clientele changes, the climate changes, research changes and evolves. It's an inevitability, and you can either kick and scream about it or you can embrace it and face the world head on. I preach the path of the lifelong learner because it was a hard lesson for me to learn. If you watched my last video completely, you heard me talk about my experiences with photography as my original career choice. And I made mistakes. Lots of mistakes. But that was before I embraced my role as a lifelong learner. I realize I'm getting a bit off topic here, so I'm going to circle back. You're not showing weakness by acknowledging that someone has a good idea or even a better idea than you. You're showing growth and maturity and acknowledging that even if your knowledge on a subject is vast, there's still alternative ways to look at things. I've exhausted this topic for today. I'm working on another video in tandem with this one, and I don't know when it'll be out. I also know I'm behind on responding to comments. There are, in fact, some really great comments I've received, and I want to take some time to respond to them. So if you left me one like a week ago and I only respond this evening, I'm sorry. I really prefer to give things my full attention when I'm able to, and sometimes that just doesn't happen right away. Also, again, if you're interested, I love talking to everyone, and you're welcome to join my Discord. It's a friendly place, sometimes quiet, but they're all good people. Thank you for listening.